After making a video on some of the best covers made in metal, we simply had no other choice but to go to the dark side. So today, let's take a look at some of the worst covers recorded by some of the most incredible metal bands on the planet. Here you go.
I can see you every night, rain.
Now, before you start throwing stones at me, I simply have to point out that I'm a huge fan of at least some of the bands on this list, including the first one. So talking about some of these is actually rather difficult to me. But despite the whole fact that everyone knows how much I love Judas Priest, I simply have to point out that even the metal gods aren't immune to commercial missteps, with one of those, in my opinion, being present on the 1988's Ram It Down. When following a frustration with Reckless, recorded for the Turbo record, Judas Priest decided to record their own rendition of the legendary Chuck Berry's Johnny Be Good for a soundtrack of a movie of the same name.
That girl's not wearing any underwear.
And here's the thing, in my opinion, Judas Priest's rendition of Johnny Be Good isn't actually bad per se. It fits that late 80s glossy Priest production, but at the same time, it did feel like a forced attempt to grab the American market. And in addition to that, it doesn't really add that much to Chuck Berry's classic, and what is most importantly, if you cut it from a setlist, Ram It Down, in my opinion, does not lose anything. So yeah, there it is. I said it. Back in 1999, one of the stalwarts of groove metal, Machine Head, tried to make it into a more trendy at that time territory, branching out into the world of nu metal with their third studio album, The Burning Red. And one of the biggest surprises in that album, at least for me, was the cover on Police's Message in the Bottle, which later on we found out was mostly the idea of producer Ross Robinson, who heard the new guitarist Ari Loster practicing it during the rehearsal and suggested the band included it on the album to grab the attention of new fans. Which, by the way, for the record, the frontman Rob Flynn strictly opposed. And you know what? I'm with Rob on that one, as in my opinion, it became far not the best cover this band has ever recorded, and definitely not the attention grabber Machine Head wanted it to be. Believe it or not, but even Dave Mustaine has a skipped track or two. And Megadeth's cover of These Boots Are Made for Walking by Nancy Sinatra is, in my opinion, one of those. They've added a layer of juvenile smut to the lyrics, and on a masterpiece like Killing Is My Business, it felt like nothing more than a distraction from his attempt to out-shred Metallica back in the day.
You've been lying and dreaming of believing. You keep saying when you want to get.
Oh, and by the way, guys, I actually did a special episode on all of the covers Megadeth had ever done in their entire career. So if you haven't watched it, definitely check it out after watching this video. Because, yeah, there are some incredible ones on that list. Way better than this one. Punk rock has always been about piss, vinegar, and rage. And if we're being very honest, Motley Crue's rendition of Energy in the UK has none of that. It is too polished, the lyric changes feel unnecessary, and hearing Vince Neil try to mimic a Cockney accent, it's just plain painful. Even for me, being from Ukraine, making it one of the best examples of how not to do a punk classic. As if I want to listen to a good cover on Energy in the UK, I'd be taking Motorhead and Lemmy any day over this one. The next one is a proof that even having such legends as Dimebag Darrell sometimes cannot save a bad idea. Nickelback, Kid Rock, and Dimebag's collaboration on Elton John's Saturday Night's Alright for Fightin' was recorded for a movie sequel in 2003. And on paper, it had everything to be an incredible rock and roll collab. But it turned out that when you try to force a rock and roll classic into a very specific post-grunge body vibe, you usually end up with something that actually belongs to the bargain bin. It is no secret that I simply love In Flames, but if we're being very honest, their 2003 take on Land of Confusion by Genesis is simply painful to listen to. First of all, they completely lost the vibe of the original, and secondly, well, we simply have to talk about that snare drum, which has that Saint Angerish pang-ping that just feels totally out of place for a melodic death metal band, making it, in my opinion, the worst song In Flames have ever recorded in their entire career. And here, guys, if you don't absolutely hate me for my take on at least some of these albums, I simply have to point out that only a fraction of the people who watch my videos are actually subscribed to this channel. So if you're not one of those, and especially if this is not the first video you're watching here, I would really appreciate it if you would consider subscribing right now. Let's continue building this amazing heavy metal community together. In 2001, industrial metal band Powerman 500 recorded their rendition of one of the biggest disco group's debut singles for the comedy Zoolander. That one, of course, being Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And here's the thing, it is recorded for a comedy movie, so it's supposed to make people laugh. And it actually does so perfectly. And even more, it's not really a bad song per se, but it is one of those tracks that I don't think that most of you would ever listen after watching that film. Which, if you think about it, kind of creates a pattern. As I just realized that most of the songs on this worst covers ever recorded in metal were actually recorded for movie soundtracks.
Relax, don't you wear when you wanna.
Pink Floyd is one of those bands that, in my opinion, is simply impossible to cover because of the atmosphere that this band creates with their music. And when it comes to Korn's attempt at another brick in the wall, I have to give it to them. They did capture the psychedelic stoner rock weight, and they clearly did give their all while playing this song live. And while Korn insisted on playing this live hundreds of times, and I'm more than sure it did become a fan favorite for at least some of the Korn fans, in my opinion, the biggest problem with this cover is that whenever you listen to it, there is this very strong feeling that something is simply missing from it, making it a rather brave effort that ultimately, in my opinion, always feels kind of flawed. Like album, like song. Exodus's version of the Elvis Costello hit Pump It Up was part of their experimental groove metal phase on Force of Habit, with even Gary Holt admitting that it is his least favorite Exodus album, and this cover being the peak of that identity crisis. As you know what? It is awkward, out of place, and most fans just pretend it doesn't exist. Including myself. The next one on the list is a really strange one, because in my opinion, it's really hard to make a bad cover on a song that was among the first ones to coin the term heavy metal. But somehow, The Cult were able to do that, pulling out an extremely boring cover on the legendary Born to Be Wild, released on their 1987 album Electric, which simply felt like they were trying way too hard to pivot into the heavy metal territory without adding any aggression to their music. Back in the mid-80s, Raven were under a lot of pressure from their label Atlantic to make a commercially sound and commercially successful album to be able to break into America. And with their 1986 album The Pack Is Back, the speed metal legends, just like many bands of that era, tried to venture into a glam metal territory. Yet despite their attempt, the album reached only the 121st position on the Billboard Top 200 chart, thus on one hand failing to succeed commercially, and on the other hand, failing to resonate with the die-hard Raven fans. And among the rather mediocre songs on that record, their cover on the Spencer Davis Group's Gimme Some Lovin' is possibly the most mediocre of all, being a filler among the album of fillers. It is no secret that Alexi Laiho had a great sense of humor, which in my opinion is the only reason Children of Bodom ever recorded the cover on Britney Spears' Oops, I Did It Again. And while yes, it's an eclectic mixture of Bodom's signature shredding and Britney's pop hooks, which on paper sounds simply incredible, in my opinion, it is one of those songs that it is fun exactly once, just for the heck of it. But you barely want to re-listen to it once again, which is actually quite strange, because yeah, I do on one hand know that a lot of Children of Bodom fans simply love that song, and at the same time I usually simply love metal covers on some of the pop classics. But in my opinion, this is actually one of those missed opportunities when a band could have made it sound like their own song, but somehow they failed to do so. And I can't even explain you why. And the next one is possibly one of the most divisive ones on this list, as 6 Feet Under's Death and Roll rendition of the AC/DC classic TNT, in my opinion, only works if you're a die-hard, hardcore fan of that one specific subgenre of metal. And if you are such, it might be a great demonstration of how death metal merged with 70s rock. But for everyone else, hearing those vocals over a classic rock staple just sounds like a very odd misfire. And thus we come to the one which you most likely will absolutely hate me for. And here I simply have to state it once again, despite me being a huge Iron Maiden fan, I usually don't really like the covers Iron Maiden did on other bands. And in my opinion, Iron Maiden's version of Kill Me Ce Soir by Golden Earring is among their weakest ones. Recorded during the No Prayer for the Dying sessions, it doesn't really know if it wants to be a 70s tribute or a proper Maiden song. It toggles between the two and never finds its proper fit in, which actually makes it one of the only Iron Maiden songs that might be a skip, even for such a die-hard Iron Maiden fan like myself.
Turn off the light and hold me tight. Come on, man, bend down your head.
And to close this list, we simply have to talk about the band whose covers I simply love, and the band that has made so many of them that it kind of became a part of their normal catalog. Because if we're making a list of the best or the worst metal covers ever made, we simply cannot ignore Metallica. And while this band has some of the most incredible covers ever made in this genre, which I did reflect in our best metal covers ever list twice, Metallica's take on We Are a Happy Family by Ramones is definitely not one of those. Recorded during the infamous Saint Anger sessions for a 2003 tribute album, it carries all the hallmarks of that era. The abrasive production and a total lack of guitar solos, and while it captures the chaos of the Ramones, it loses the charm. It's Metallica at their most unrefined, and a rare moment when this band simply failed to pay a tribute to their own heroes, making it possibly the worst cover on this list. But anyways, this is my list of the worst covers made by some of the most incredible metal bands on the planet. And please don't hate me for it. But instead, please let us know what you think about this list and which other songs do you think should have made it here, which I might include in the part 2 of this video. But for now, thank you so much for watching this video, guys, and we will prevail. Slava Ukraini!